Hi, I'm Gigi. I'm one of the members of the Voice of Domestic Workers, and I'm one of the participant of this film, Our Journey, My Home is Not My Home.
And me too. I am the member of the Voice of Domestic Workers, and I am one of the participants of the film.
Hi, I'm Mimi, and 45 years old and a mother of three, and a legal trustee of the Voice of Domestic Workers.
I'm Dr. Joyce Young, lecturer from University of York. I've done research on migrant domestic workers of the last decade.
I'm Tasia Kobylinska, and I'm a filmmaker who specialises in participatory filmmaking and processes. And I supported the incredible women from the Voice of Domestic Workers to make their own film.
I'm Marisa Bigonya. I'm a domestic worker myself and a mother of three children. I'm actually the founding member of the Voice of Domestic Workers. Like many other fellow domestic workers, I also escaped from abusive employer, and actually that's the driving force of forming the group. And I realized how much we needed each other, that we needed to be stronger, and to do that, we need to be united as one group, and that's where we started actually in forming the organization.
I met Marisa in 2009. I started doing research on migrant domestic workers. And then Marisa formed up a self-help group called Justice for Domestic Workers with several other migrant domestic workers with the support of United Union. When I started my research, I was shocked by the slavery condition that many domestic workers suffer from in this society. And just to give you an example, we've conducted a survey with more than 500 migrant domestic workers in the UK in 2018. And half of them were not given enough food to eat in the workplace. And even though they are living domestic workers, more than 60% of them were not provided individual bedrooms in their employers' houses. This means they have to sleep on the floor or sofa. And also 77% of them reported they had been sexually, verbally, physically, or psychologically abused. So I think there's a clear evidence that modern slavery still exists in this sector.
I think it's really important to educate and raise awareness among migrant domestic workers, because they could then protect themselves as they become aware of their rights here in the UK.
So when I joined the Voice of Domestic Workers, it was, it was 2015. It was just how many years now? Way back then, it was I think it's the starting of the modern slavery debate regarding the overseas domestic worker visa. So I found the Voice of Domestic Workers through Facebook. And for me at that moment, I didn't know about them a lot of things. But when the moment I joined with them, I started to learn about my rights. This is because it's really important, because they help us, to stand and be the voice of your own rights. They educate us. They empower us a lot of things. And regardless whatever your status in this country, the most important thing is, even you don't have that legal rights, you have still that human rights. Because this is, I think, really very important, that because a lot of people, especially if you are undocumented, and a lot of people just treating you not good, like exploiting you. They will use this your immigration status against you. And a lot of people didn't know at the moment that this is what really happened, especially how our employers badly treated us. And you know what, every time we go back all these things, although it's a very traumatic, and at least now we're starting to, with the help of the boys, like we did a lot of counseling, and they help us rebuild our lives.
And to those people, to those domestic workers who came here, that we want, they want our help.
Yep.
We used to help them, like when they want to run away because they are being abused. So we used to rescue them, shelter them, and find them a job.
And the most important thing, that
We
we educate
educate
and
them.
empower them to stand up and be the voice of their own
Their own
rights.
There has been significant visa change since 2012, because before 2012, these workers are initially issued the overseas domestic work visa, but they were allowed to renew it every year until 5 years. They were able to gain permanent residence and universal citizenship. However, since 2012, they were not allowed to renew the visa. This means that they will either become undocumented or they have to be deported back to their own home countries once their 6 months overseas domestic work visa expires. So this has significantly reinforced their vulnerability. And despite all the exploitations they have suffered from, they remain very invisible, in the public sphere. I think this is also one of the purpose of our participatory arts project.
By drawing pictures, photos of us, like one of them had drawn herself sleeping under the tree and surrounded by bees, those. And that actually, when she escaped from abusive employer, she didn't know anyone, so she slept in the park, and in the park something happened to her. She was sexually abused, so she couldn't say it by words, but she managed to tell us her story through that picture.
As a researcher, what I found particularly interesting and innovative about the voice of domestic workers is that art has played a very significant role in the organizing process. It creates a social process through which members are able to share their stories, which are very difficult to be verbally articulated. So they're able to share their grievances or struggles and even the hopes through art. They're also able to develop self-confidence and empower themselves. And also, particularly for this exhibition, I think putting the exhibition in the gallery setting is also an important process of validating the experiences and give them a chance to share.
Justice for domestic workers who did that painting. It's just like you can see our journey from Philippines, small houses there on top. Then there's a sea and then so they fly overseas, and then there's at the bottom there's like a city, I think, and city. That's where they are the fate brought them, where they work. So from the Philippines fly overseas and then up to the foreign land. So that's their journey.
In that exhibit, you can see the very personal, things that we kept for so many years, actually.
Mine, the one I used when I left the Philippines, the shoes that I'm wearing when I left the Philippines, and the same shoes that I wore when I came here in UK. Those are the things that has sentimental value to us when we left our country, and we carried it until here in UK. Some are the pictures of their children, letters of their children, even the contracts of the employers where they worked before in the Middle East, old phones, old uniforms.
And it's about giving them political and cultural value by exhibiting them, isn't it? It's like these are really important.
Yeah.
And I have the letter of my son when I was actually in Singapore. And you know how at that time there was no technology, yeah? And it's by post, so how many months would I receive the letter and how many months I would respond, and the same way with my children. So I also had the photo of them when I first left them, yeah? So they were just 1, 2, 3 years old. And it's the photo that I put under my pillow because it's so difficult. Like I always hear them cry, you know, from time to time, and I couldn't cry. I look after other people, children, and I couldn't look after my own children because I had to work abroad to be able to support them.
Joyce approached me when I was talking about participatory filmmaking
Yeah.
and the methodology of it, and how the idea behind it is to hand over the means of production to the group that you want to make a film about, so that they, or in your case you, set the agenda, you set the terms, you decide what's important, and you, the group, take control of how it's produced. What do you remember about when we first started out with the idea that we were going to make a film?
The very first time that you came there is you taught us how to do the film, you know, starting from the camera, how to use the camera, you know, the angles, how to take the photos. That's what I remembered. I didn't expect that we will end up to have a film.
I found, what I remember was that because you were filming each other,
Oh yeah.
that actually something new was happening, like you were telling your stories in a different way together.
Yes.
And I remember that everybody was making each other cry.
Yeah. Because we used to tell our story, but when we're already filming, we're telling our story, but in a very emotional, That is really quite moving. We are the interviewer. Our colleague is is also the interviewee. Our colleague is the one filming as well. Our audience is our colleagues as well. So in the middle of the film, every time that we're taking a film, we're filming, you know, once the interviewer asks question, the interviewer will cry, the interviewer will cry, the one in the camera is crying, the audience, the members are all crying, and end up that, okay, another take. Because we all hear all the noises, all the sobbing, all the, in whispering, so we have to retake it again.
I mean, when we're doing this film, and it's the same experience that we have. We are the one who film ourselves, and in the beginning, the Tasha is the one who's teaching us how to do our own film, and at the end we end up of doing this, like to do the exhibit, and I think it's everywhere in UK. We're doing this exhibit, and it's a very good experience for us.
We can relate to each other.
You can relate to each other, yeah.
Her experience is also my experience. It's an eye-opener that, okay, this is really happening behind closed doors, that the government has something to do with this.
It's like you could write a really powerful report, couldn't you? You could have a document with statistics, but this is so much
different,
more,
because if you will just write it in a report, people will just read, okay, we just read it.
Yeah.
Not unlike with this, they watched it. They can hear our voices. They can see our face. They can see our how hard it to us. That we're telling our story, but it's not that easy because we experienced that. You know,
So I think one of the message I want to deliver through the exhibition is that migrant domestic workers are important workers. They are important section of contemporary society, and they have contributed significantly to economy of advanced countries. I think it is important to recognize their
Yeah.
efforts, and it is important to listen to their stories.
Yeah, and we really want this exhibit to reach out more people, more policy makers to understand, the importance of domestic workers, not just in society but in economy. Because we are the workers who allowed other workers to be able to work. Yeah, I'm actually the perfect evidence, the living evidence of why the pre-2012 visa rights on overseas domestic workers work. Because when I escaped from abusive employer, I didn't even know that there was rights, that I could change employer, that I could renew my visa. But when I needed it most at that time in 2004, when I escaped, it was there. And it helped me change my life, rebuild my life, and I was able to provide decent living with my children. And that's actually the best prevention against forced labor, against modern slavery and trafficking. So we're very much the heart of campaign of the voice of domestic workers is really to reinstate the overseas domestic worker visa rights that they removed since 2012.